feedback tool. Thank you all for taking some time today to join us in the October installment of our webinar series. Today, we'll be bringing you a Stop Selling, Start Sharing by Tim Asimos. If you are new to the GoToWebinar platform, you likely see a control panel over on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see it, that's good. It means it's already minimized. You'll see a tiny little toolbar with the 4 icons on it floating up in the top right corner of the screen. If you've got a big control bar and it's hiding the slides, then there's a little right-hand arrow, and you can click on that. It'll minimize the control panel so you can see all this great content that Tim has put together for us. If you already have your control panel minimized, I want to point out, if you would like to ask any questions along the way, please click on the left-hand arrow of that little vertical toolbar. That will slide out the control panel, and you will see a question and answer dialog box where you can type in your questions. Please feel free to type in your questions as we go through the webinar. That'll give our team time to sort and order those out. And at the conclusion of the webinar, Tim has 15 minutes set aside to answer those questions. Any questions we don't answer during the webinar, we'll make sure we get an answer for afterwards, and we'll make sure we get that information to you. Tim Asimos is the Vice President and Director of Digital Innovation at Circle S Studio, a strategic marketing and design agency focused on helping AEC firms grow in today's increasingly chaotic digital landscape. Tim leads the online marketing team to develop innovative strategies in web development, content marketing, and online lead generation. His unique approach is based on more than a decade of experience in corporate business-to-business and AEC marketing, placing him in the same seat as many of Circle S Studio's clients. Tim is a syndicated blogger and frequent speaker on the topics of online marketing, lead generation, and content marketing. An SMPS member and certified professional services marketer, his AEC industry expertise has been featured in numerous publications, webinars, programs, and conferences. He is a member of the American Marketing Association and is currently president of the Richmond, Virginia chapter. He holds a BS in Communication Studies and an MBA from Liberty University. And we've brought Tim to you today. You know that we at Client Feedback Tool are always focused on creating value for your clients, adding value in everything that you do. And Tim comes to us to share his message of how you can begin demonstrating your value-added approach long before the market is your client. So Tim, I'd like to turn this over to you and welcome you to share your information with us.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the introduction and for bringing me in here today to share with your clients content marketing. Would like to say hello to everyone. A big thanks for joining in. Looks like we've got a good crowd today. It's definitely a privilege for me to present for you and about a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, which is content marketing and just the power that it can bring your firm's business development and sales and marketing. As Ryan said, I'm Tim Asimos. I am Vice President and Director of Digital Innovation at Circle S Studio. I won't share too much about our firm, but he mentioned we're a full-service strategic marketing and digital agency located in Richmond. We work with primarily business-to-business companies as well as professional services firms, and we have a lot of clients in the AEC space. My background is AEC, so I'm kind of marrying my previous work in the industry with the work that my firm has been doing for 10 years or more in the industry. We do a lot of work with strategy, web development, website redesign, rebrands, brand refreshes, content marketing. You get the picture. If you want to know more about our firm, feel free to visit our website for circlesstudio.com. There's a lot of good content there, by the way. All right, so before we get going, I just want to briefly review today's agenda. I want you to have an idea of what you're going to expect from the webinar today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to make a case for content marketing, okay? Why is content marketing something that your firm should care about? Why should you invest in it? Why should you set aside time and resources to do it, right? We're going to make a case for it. Then once we make that case, we're going to look at the 5 steps of content marketing, okay? We're going to give you kind of those steps for building a content marketing program and to kind of help you grasp the big picture and understand it. We're going to share some examples of content marketing in action along the way. Those will be some industry examples as well as those outside the industry that I think we can learn a lot from. And then kind of to wrap up, we're gonna just talk a little bit about how to sustain success. Once you get a program off the ground, you know, once you get things started, how do you sustain success? And of course, we're gonna have some time at the end for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Now, just before we jump in to today's presentation, I would like to throw up a quick poll. Just want to see where our audience today stands as it relates to content marketing. So just a pretty simple question. I have a few different answers for you. Is your firm using content marketing? So if you could just take a few minutes to vote, and then we will share the results. All right, let's go ahead and share the results here. All right, okay. Good to know. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, let's jump right in. Let's make a case for content marketing. If you're trying to get buy-in from executives, if you're trying to justify budget or staff or resources, or quite frankly, maybe today you join the webinar and you're skeptical about content marketing. It just seems like another buzzword. You don't exactly know what all the fuss is about, right? I mean, content marketing really has been all the rage for the last few years. It's a hot topic, it's a buzzword, and I do a lot of speaking around the country, and it's definitely the topic I'm asked to speak on the most. But before I really share the advice with you on kind of how to leverage content marketing, I do think it's important to understand why AEC firms need a different approach to marketing in the first place. So we're going to address, you know, why should you prioritize it? And then piggybacking on that, I also think it's important to define content marketing. You know, I think at times content marketing is misunderstood. I don't know that everyone fully understands exactly what we're trying to do with it, so we're going to define it before we move on to the steps. So now, this is not anything that I really will have a hard time convincing you to believe, but the point should be made that thought leadership is absolutely imperative in this industry. Now, I do think the term thought leadership is perhaps overused. It's become a bit bankrupt, but really the idea behind thought leadership isn't, right? That is very, very important. An industry where clients hire firms because of your intellectual capital, right? Your brains, what you're able to do. Because they believe that you can do it better than the next guy. Thought leadership is really a top priority for any firm. And if you think about it, while you would like to think that all of your firms are uniquely qualified to do the work that you do, the truth is every single one of your competitors, for the most part, have the same basic qualifications. They've got people with similar expertise, similar certifications, accreditations, their resumes all look very, very similar. So the idea of being seen as the go-to expert in your field, right, in the markets that you serve, that is crucial, right? And in the industry, it's really hard to stand out. Differentiation is difficult. Why is that? Well, let's just take for a moment, consider your competitors' websites. Look at their brochures. Walk down the aisle at an industry trade show and just look at all the booths that you'll see there. What do you notice, right? Everyone says the same exact thing. Everyone looks the same. If clients were choosing a firm based solely on their marketing collateral, they'd have a really hard time making that decision, telling everyone apart, right? And here's the thing too, everyone says that they're experts. Everyone has the same long laundry list of services and expertise, right? And I tell people this all the time, most marketing in this industry, and in a lot of other industries too, it does more to equalize than it actually does to differentiate, right? So few firms actually stand out, at least not based on marketing and business development alone. There may be other factors related to that. So Add to that the challenge of differentiation, right? That's a big challenge. Let's talk a little bit about how the buyer of professional services is changing. So you might say, well, how are they changing? Well, first off, today's buyers are different, right? They're going online more and more to find and vet potential firms. They're incredibly self-directed. They do a lot of research online, often extensively, before they make a selection decision. And in many cases, we're seeing this with some of our clients, pre-qualifications taking place before they ever even issue an RFP. Now, if you think about it, we've become a culture of Googlers, right? We pretty much will go to Google to find out almost anything you can think of. If you want to know about a particular topic, you go to Google. And this is interesting. Research shows from the Corporate Executive Board, today's business-to-business buyer go through nearly 60% of the selection process before they ever talk to anyone in sales or business development. Here's another point. They're also becoming younger. Older professionals, right, the boomers, they're retiring. And in many cases, guess who's replacing them? A 30-something millennial who is pretty much a digital native, and they do things differently, right? As one of our clients, an executive for a construction company, he's like, hey, our clients aren't like me anymore, right? And this represents a seismic shift from how things have been for the last several decades. It is still a relationship business, absolutely. The difference is today relationships are becoming increasingly initiated and nurtured online, independent of a business development rep. And traditional marketing in the AEC industry, it really doesn't help in that endeavor. Now, lastly, AEC buyers are becoming more and more sales averse. What do you mean by that? Well, let's think about that. People don't like being sold. You don't like being sold when you go into a store no more than I do, right? We don't like people selling to us and here's the truth, all right? Your audience is not nearly as interested in your company as you are, right? Big surprise, but I think sometimes we forget that. I mean, think about most of your marketing, your accolades, your news updates, your list of services, your latest project win. Prospects and clients really don't care that much. Now, they care if it happens to be them that you're talking about, but otherwise, that's not what they're interested in. What are they interested in, okay? They're interested in things that deal with them, things that match their interests, their needs, right? So traditional marketing has really been all about out-yelling the competition. It's been very company-centric, not client-centric. It's been focused on the firm, not the audience of the firm, right? So here's another truth. You know, thinking about all this company-centric, company-focused marketing, guess what? People can ignore it today, right? And honestly, I think clients have become conditioned to ignore the typical marketing, right? They can ignore your ads that you might place in a program or a magazine. They can delete your emails. They can throw away that direct mail piece that you spent a lot of time creating. They can unfollow you on social media, right? They can just plain old ignore you. I mean, think about this. How many brochures do you actually give away at conferences and trade shows these days? Now, don't count the ones that you sneak in people's swag bags, all right? The point is, today's buyers crave marketing that is helpful, not boastful, right? They're no longer really tolerating this old approach, and this is really an historical shift. I love how Clark Kokich, author of the book Do or Die, describes it. He says, in the past, you could simply turn up the volume if you wanted to get your message across. But listen to this. Today, you have to turn up the value. You have to give customers something they actually prize in order to have them pay any attention to you. So, effective marketing today has become all about a give-to-get approach, right? You've got to add value. You've got to be helpful. You've got to build trust and rapport and earn their attention, not demand their attention. So, needless to say, for many firms, this is a fundamental shift in philosophy, a kind of flipping of the script, in order to transform your marketing into something more powerful and effective, something that clients and prospects will find much more compelling and much more likable. And that's where content marketing comes in. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with this phrase, content is king. I think it was coined by Bill Gates some time ago, many years ago. But I'm here to tell you that content alone isn't really king. It's not enough, right? Content is not a unique idea. Every firm has content. Guess what? You guys have always had lots of content, right? And you've been using that content to market your firms. Think about it. Your brochures, your collateral, your SOQs, your project profiles. You've got lots of content. My old firm had a whole closet dedicated to holding brochures and sell sheets and things like that, right? So content alone isn't king. It has to be the right kind of content. And that is where content marketing, right, as we're about to discuss, is really a complete departure from the typical types of content that AEC firms have been creating, okay? Content marketing is not marketing using content. It's not synonymous with public relations. It's not another way to say search engine optimization, right? What is content marketing? Well, let's go to the source for a textbook definition. Content Marketing Institute, they are the leading evangelists of content marketing. I would recommend you frequent their site. They've got a lot of great helpful things there. According to the Content Marketing Institute, content marketing is the strategic marketing approach of creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract, notice the word attract, and acquire a clearly defined audience with the objective of driving profitable customer action. Put it in layman's terms for you. I love this quote. Robert Rose, he's with CMI. He puts it this way: traditional marketing and advertising is telling the world you're a rock star. Content marketing is showing the world that you are one. Remember, it's about providing value, not necessarily volume. And it's not a new idea, okay? We're going to take a little content marketing history lesson courtesy of Content Marketing Institute. Way back in 1895, John Deere, I'm sure you've all heard of them, they launched a magazine called The Furrow. Was it to sell tractors? No, it was to help farmers be better farmers, right? And they still print this today. 1900, Michelin developed a 400-page guide to sell tires? No. It helped their drivers maintain cars and find good lodging for road trips, clearly before we had the internet and TripAdvisor, right? 1904, Jell-O created and distributed a free recipe book, all right? And guess what? It contributed to more than $1 million in sales by 1906. And this might come as a surprise. Content marketing as a concept isn't new to the AEC industry either. In 1913, Kansas City-based engineering firm by the name of Burns and McDonnell, I'm sure many of you are aware who they are, they launched Benchmark magazine, okay? And guess what? It did not brag about their services and their expertise. Guess what it did? Covered a broad range of trends and topics and content about engineering, and it's still produced today, all right? Now, closer to the present day, Hasbro partnered with Marvel to create G.I. Joe, right? As a comic book for G.I. Joe as a way to promote their toys. Now, think about all of these examples. The purpose of the content is not sales, okay? No one is trying to sell anything. Now, obviously, they're selling the value of their companies and their products, absolutely. But they're not having to sell and give a sales pitch and talk about themselves and do it and able to do it. And guess what else they all have in common? They're all still around. Now, let's move to the modern day. Any ideas of what the best example of content marketing is I can come up with from the last couple years? The Lego movie, all right? Think about this. This is basically an hour and 45-minute commercial, okay? One big, huge sales pitch. However, they're not actually selling anything. They're not selling. They're not talking about products. They're just entertaining, okay? They're being funny. They're entertaining, right? And people paid big bucks to see this hour and 45-minute commercial. And guess what? 2014, the year this movie came out, was a record-breaking year for the company. And the company continues to grow. And by the way, they're getting a lot of money because they have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Now, you're probably saying to yourself at this point, all right, Tim, I get it, but we're the AEC world, right? Well, this is different. None of this stuff works for us. We can't sell our work by making movies for kids, right? And you're probably right about that. But what you need to do is think about the philosophy behind the Lego movie, the philosophies behind all of these examples that I just shared, and simply apply them to your firm, to your industry, to your expertise. Now, The Lego example is much more about entertaining than educating. But in business-to-business marketing, in the AEC industry, it's all about educating your audience. It's about brands and firms becoming publishers. And one of the phenomenal things about the digital age we live in is that it's quite easy for firms to become publishers. Think about media for a moment. All right? Historically, marketers had two basic options for media. You had paid media, you had earned media. Now, paid is obviously your traditional advertising. This is running a print ad in E&R magazine, maybe running an ad in your state AIA organization, maybe putting an ad in a conference guide, things like that. Now, today it obviously also includes digital advertising, pay-per-click, online display, but basically it's any kind of promotion that you're having to pay in order to receive, okay? Now, think about earned media. Earned media has always been preferred by AEC firms, right? This is having magazines and newspapers and journals write about your firm, writing about your projects, getting your name in the press. So you basically had two options. You had to buy attention or you had to earn attention. And earning attention is hard, and buying attention costs money, which AEC firms aren't always so willing to contribute to their marketing. Now you have options, right? In today's world, you've got owned media and shared media that are adding to the mix. Now, owned media is any content you create. This includes your website, your blog, your emails. You're the ones creating it. You're controlling the message. You're writing the stories, and you're publishing the content. And then add to that, social media has kind of added this new category, shared media. It's very similar to earned, but instead of earning the attention of writers and media companies, you're earning the attention of your audience. You're earning the attention of people out there in social media. And so it's about your content being shared and, you know, that compounding your reach. So we've got a new landscape to work with, okay? And with owned and shared media, it's about outsmarting, not necessarily outspending your competitors, right? So in this new landscape, smaller and mid-sized firms, which I think I'm aware there's some firms on here with 25 or less people, as well as some larger firms, guess what? The small and mid-sized firms can compete with the guys at the top of the E&R 500 from a marketing perspective, right? Because how big and how powerful your own media presence is really dependent upon you. It's not necessarily dependent on an advertising budget, for example. You know, and guess what else? Owned media leads to earned media. One quick example I'll share. My previous firm, we landed a cover story for, at the time it was CE News, simply because a writer doing research on a particular topic came across a blog post that we had published on that topic. That led to a call to me, which then led to a cover story and a four-page spread, right? Not bad. No press release involved. They called us. And that's because content marketing prioritizes compelling content over advertising and PR. And it pulls clients to you rather than pushing your message on them. In a nutshell, content marketing is a pull strategy. It's about attraction. Whereas traditional is a push strategy, okay? Traditionally, it's been all about pushing your information out to your audience, kind of with a bullhorn. Content marketing is all about pulling people in like a magnet, not shouting with a bullhorn. And I love the way David Meerman Scott puts this. He says you can buy attention, which is advertising. You can beg for attention from the media, which is PR. Or you can own attention by creating something interesting and valuable and then publishing it online for free. So content marketing is all about owning the attention of your target audience. Now, remember a few minutes ago I talked about differentiation and thought leadership and how obviously this is an ongoing objective as well as a challenge for AEC firms, okay? Now, typical marketing content doesn't help with trust and credibility. At least not to the degree it needs to. But content marketing, because of its educational nature, it helps you build trust with your audience and establish credibility as knowledgeable firms in your industry. You know, I hear a lot of AEC firm leaders all the time talk about their desire for their marketing to introduce the firm to new audiences and build awareness with potential clients. A content marketing program can help you realize all those goals, right? It can allow you to be found online by potential clients. who have little or no knowledge of your firm and start to build a relationship with them. And guess what? It also will then position your firm as trustworthy and credible ahead of an RFP. It's about pre-positioning. Remember, we discussed how today's AEC buyers are going online to find and vet potential firms, and in many cases, they are pre-qualifying. In fact, research from McKinsey found that two-thirds of business-to-business deals are lost before a formal RFP process even begins. Think about that. So pre-positioning is important, and it certainly goes beyond the activities of principals and business development staff. Now, certainly clients and prospects are forming opinions based on your firm's reputation, their previous experience with your firm, based on relationships they've been building with folks at your firm, and that plays a big role, absolutely. But they're also taking into account what else they know about your firm, what they see on your website, your blog, what they hear at a conference presentation, your other content. This is where content marketing can help a firm pre-position themselves in advance of the RFP, right? It's about demonstrating your expertise. Remember the quote from Robert Rose. It's about being a rock star and showing you're a rock star instead of just saying that you're one. So instead of saying you're an expert, content marketing actually demonstrates it, right? You think about that. Anybody can claim to be an expert, right? It's an easy thing to do to say, hey, we're experts in this. And I can guarantee you that every single last one of your competitors make the same claims that you do. But instead of saying, content marketing is about doing, right? Demonstrating your subject matter expertise, showing thought leadership, right? Showing it, not saying it, showing your knowledge and expertise through educational content. Remember, clients don't just buy your services, they also buy an approach to solving their problem or their need. And content marketing, like the one that you see here, this ebook, it provides clients and prospects a window into your approach, far greater than any typical marketing brochure or collateral or boilerplate ever could. So naturally, the goal of content marketing is to make your firm, your website, your blog, a destination for learning. You want to become not only the go-to firm in your industry, right, but also the go-to resource to answer your audience's questions, okay? Remember, it's about value, okay? It's about adding value to their lives and educating and informing them. The point is, you want to be a resource and let your content demonstrate your expertise. So to kind of wrap up making a case for content marketing, I'll share this quote from Craig Davis. He's Chief Creative Officer for one of the largest ad agencies in the world. And ad agencies know a thing or two about interrupting people, right? Listen to this idea. I really think it's a revolutionary thing for marketers to grab onto, okay? We need to stop interrupting what people are interested in, and we need to be what people are interested in. Now think about that. Imagine if your marketing was something that your audience actually cared about and was interested in. And that, my friends, is what content marketing is all about. Content that adds value, and ultimately being what people are interested in and owning their attention. Okay, so now hopefully you've got a clear understanding of content marketing and the philosophy behind it. You know why you need to do it, how it helps your firms. Now, I'm going to switch gears. We're going to cover 5 steps to implementing a content marketing program. A lot of firms, they might get the concept, they understand the value, but they don't necessarily know how to get it started, how to make it work. So we're going to talk about these things. Now, first things first, set the strategy. Strategy is absolutely critical to success, but I see a lot of firms that skip right past strategy. They jump into content creation, but we're all in the built environment. Think about it. Buildings need blueprints, okay? They need site plans, so content marketing needs that as well. So let's walk through some of the thoughts on a content marketing strategy. First off, you've got to align with your firm's strategic goals, right? You know, basically what you're trying to accomplish from a content marketing standpoint needs to be aligned with what your firm is trying to accomplish from a business standpoint. If you want to get buy-in from principals, your strategy for content marketing has to be completely aligned with the strategic goals of the firm. And before you start, you really should stop and ask, what's your purpose in doing this in the first place, right? Define your content marketing mission. What are you looking to do? Now, a great example of this is the American Express Open Forum. Now, the target audience for Open Forum is small businesses, not mid-size, not large, small. Okay? American Express discovered that research shows that nearly 60% of small businesses fail within the first 4 years. Okay? So American Express said, that's not good. We want to reduce that number. So they created Open Forum and content marketing strategy to help, and because they figured this out. Guess what? Small business owners excel in their area of expertise. It makes sense, right? A plumbing company, the owner is clearly going to be a great plumber, but he may not be a marketing genius, okay? He may not be a business operations guru. So what they tend to lack is know-how in running their business. So American Express created Open Forum, and their content marketing mission is really quite simple: help small businesses do more business. And they created an informational community platform to do just that, right? The site receives like 15 million page views a year, 200,000 unique visitors a month. Interestingly enough, 85 to 90% of traffic comes from organic means, so they're not spending money to get to traffic. And this is the best part for them. It's the largest source for new card members that the company has, right? And 99% of the content is not about American Express. So I think this example is really a case study that AEC firms can use as a source of inspiration for your content marketing mission. And it all starts with clearly identifying your target audience, right? Think about American Express, small businesses, right? Now, a lot of firms are multidisciplined. You work in a number of verticals, a number of markets, but you can't be all things to all people. So you're going to need to narrow the focus down. Who are you really trying to reach, right? You really need to think about that. And although AEC is a business-to-business industry, don't lose sight of the fact that your marketing should always be approached really through a person-to-person lens. Who's that person on the other end receiving the message or the content? One of the best ways to do this is to create what's called buyer personas or client profiles. They really represent your key target clients and provide information that is going to drive your marketing and your content creation. And how do you build personas? Well, research and surveys, ideally one-on-one interviews of your target audience, including current clients that you'd like to replicate, as well as prospects that you've maybe not been able to get work with. And the purpose is to really help understand your target audience on a deeper level, which will lead to more relevant and valuable content and ultimately better results. So once you've identified your key target audience, right, and built your profiles, now you want to carve what your content niche is. Keep in mind, content marketing is only going to help emphasize your differentiators and your expertise. It's not going to establish it. So there's really 3 simple questions you can answer that will provide you with guidance, okay? First question, what is your firm truly an expert in? Second question, what do you want to be known for, okay? And then lastly, this question kind of brings it all together. What subject matter expertise will best position your firm for financial success? Now, ask those 3 questions, the answers to those 3 questions, wherever there's consistency and overlap, that's your content marketing sweet spot. Now, as you think about those areas, consider the client life cycle. Think about it. What's the ultimate goal of marketing, and honestly the ultimate goal of all of your firms, right? It's to turn a prospect into a client and then turn that client into a promoter, right? A word-of-mouth advocate for your firm. Now, we're going to go into more detail about this in just a little bit as it relates to the buyer's journey, but you're going to get the idea. You've got to think through the content needs of your target audience at each stage of the client life cycle, because the client life cycle is long, and there are many, many different touch points and interactions along the way. If you think about it, a new business deal, a new client is never the result of just a single meeting, a single proposal, a single interaction. It's always the culmination of sometimes years of relationship building. And this culmination is not just one-on-one, face-to-face. It's also your marketing interactions, and you can see a lot of examples here up on the screen. You'll get the idea, lots of touch points. So your content marketing strategy needs to consider that journey and plan content around it, okay? Make your touch points intentional. Now, once you've got these critical items in place, you need to establish goals for your program. What do you want to accomplish? What's the objective? Is it new leads, better hit rate on proposals, whatever it may be? Once you have goals in place, you're going to want to establish KPIs, key performance indicators, that will help you track the ongoing performance of your program. It's going to help identify where success is and also identify areas that might need improvement. And you've identified your mission, you've got your target audience, your content niche, and now you have goals. The next thing you want to do is assemble the team, okay? You got to have the right people involved to make this happen. So you need to identify who needs to be involved in the marketing team of all the various components of the program. You know, who's going to write, who's going to design, who's going to manage, who's going to publish. And also think about who outside marketing should play a role, all right? And also perhaps even outside the firm. You know, do you need to bring in outside folks to help, whether it's a freelancer, whether it's an agency, whether it's a partner? A lot of firms, they're simply not staffed to really execute an effective content marketing strategy. So you might have to look at hiring staff or outsourcing, right? Now, obviously, a huge part of assembling the team is identifying who's going to contribute the subject matter expertise. These are likely the folks that are already out speaking at conferences. They're already writing articles, getting published in journals or magazines, right? They're already seen as thought leaders, right? That is the easy, obvious low-hanging fruit, but don't stop there. Also look below the principal and management level. Look for some of the up-and-coming young people in your firms, right? Think about it. They're knowledgeable, they're eager to make a name for themselves, they're motivated to advance their career, and they're also, and this is a big also, they're likely to have more time to help write content than your typical senior level thought leader. Now, having a verbal strategy is a great first step, but CMI's research shows that it pays when you take the time to also write it down, to document it, right? So as the last step of the strategy, make sure you write down your content marketing strategy, share it with your team, share it with the leadership of the firm, and ultimately hold yourself accountable. Now, step 2, remember, content marketing is a pull strategy. So naturally, the next step, once you've got your strategy in place, is to create magnetic content. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, it goes back to the title of the webinar. Stop selling, start sharing. Okay, now, this might seem counterintuitive, right? Especially to principals and business development staff that are always focused on bringing in the next win. Now, there is a time and a place for selling. I'm not going to tell you should never sell. But clients and prospects are not going to pay attention to a sales pitch, okay? They're not going to subscribe to your blog and come back to your website because they simply enjoy reading about your latest project win or looking at pictures of your company picnic, right? This is a fundamental shift, right? And a changing of the mantra from always be closing to always be helping. Now, I mentioned the client journey, the buyer's journey. There is a huge opportunity for content marketing to help with business development. And you do that by connecting your content to the buyer's journey. We hinted at this earlier, but think about your content niche. Think about your key subject matter expertise, right, and the services that surround that. And then think about your target audience, your personas, and the journey, and all the different information that prospects need along the way, right? The buyer's journey has been described by some as nothing more than a series of questions that must be answered. So your prospects likely have lots of unanswered questions, lots of what I call information gaps, right? Areas where they simply lack the knowledge. I mean, if you think about it, in most cases, your clients aren't engineers or architects or construction managers like you. And even if they are, maybe they're a county engineer or a city engineer, they don't have the same depth of knowledge or the same exact understanding that your firm has, right? They're just one person working there. So they're going to have other questions. So, you know, in the earlier phases of the buyer's journey, guess what's happening? Clients aren't ready to inform their selection decision. They're not really thinking about potential partners just yet. They're looking for information to better understand the best approach to a unique challenge or to better inform their budget or their project plans. They're doing their pre-construction due diligence, if you will, right? They're trying to figure out how best to move forward with this particular project, right? Things like, what kind of delivery method should I use? How should I set up the project team, or what new technology should be utilized as part of this project? The point is, your content marketing should help prospects better understand their options and provide them with insightful information, which will ultimately aid them in their due diligence. And guess what? Along the way, what's it going to do? It's going to demonstrate your firm's qualifications and expertise. And honestly, it's going to do that in ways that a proposal and even an interview can't. You're going to be building rapport over a period of time. Now, you're on your way to producing great content. You've got the right topics. You've got the expertise going. But magnetic content also has to have compelling copy. So what makes copy compelling? First things first, it has substance, okay? There's depth to it. It isn't just, a mile wide and an inch deep. There's depth, right? It's not overwhelming, but there's depth to it. It's also conversational. And what do I mean by that? It means that this is not written as an abstract in a journal. This is written to sound like you're having a one-on-one conversation, right, with someone else, with the target audience. It's well written. It's free of grammar and spelling errors, right? Those are all the things that makes it compelling. You got to have compelling copy. Now, compelling copy without excellent design is not going to necessarily meet the goals that you've set out for either. People, they might say don't judge a book by its cover, but guess what? We do, right? That's why publishers spend lots of money and do lots of testing with focus groups on the cover of books or movie posters and things like that. So make your ebook cover compelling. Make the graphics interesting in your blog posts. And if you don't have design skills in-house, hire someone outside to do it for you. Now, along those lines, visuals make a big impact on your content. Studies show that 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. So, use compelling and powerful images. Also, consider video to tell your firm's stories, maybe a video blog series or some kind of informational video. Those are all things that are important. And in all of your content creation, you got to remember this. You've got to be authentic and original. Cover what you're truly experts in and don't feel obligated to talk about things that you really shouldn't be talking about, because originality is absolutely key here, okay? There's going to be a lot of content out there talking about the same subjects, but it doesn't mean that you can't talk about that. It just means that you have to put your own spin on it and point things out that others haven't. I love this quote. I know it's a bit overused, but I'll share it anyway, from Wayne Gretzky. He once described his strategy for scoring as, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been, okay? And this is exactly how your firm should approach your thought leadership efforts, right? Be the leader. A thought leader leads, it doesn't follow. So that's important. Now, as we wrap up content creation, I got one final tip. I get asked all the time, what matters more in content marketing? Quality or quantity? And my answer is always yes. Yes, you need both, right? You need quality content and you need quantity, but I always sort of qualify that statement with the point that I would rather have one great blog post than 3 mediocre ones. So don't just try to churn out a lot of quantity of content. Make sure your content is quality, all right? Now, you've got a strategy in place. You know how to create magnetic content. Now it's time to actually publish content and spread the word, okay? I mentioned quality and quantity go hand in hand, and along with that, with quantity of content is also diversity of content. You'll want to leverage different formats for different purposes. A slide a few minutes ago showed the buyer's journey, okay? The questions are different, but the formats can vary as well. A blog post is really versatile and really can be used throughout the journey. Ebooks and white papers and webinars are valuable for different things as well. Case studies are really helpful in the latter stage when they're starting to evaluate your firm. The point is, don't just have a blog, don't just publish case studies, don't just publish a white paper. You've got to keep that content diverse. And make your firm's website the hub of your content, right? Your goal is to become a destination, right? So your website should be that destination. And all of your content should be accessible through your website in one way or another, whether it's actually housed there or just linking to it. It's all about cross promotion, right? Your one piece of content promotes another piece of content, right? You get the picture. Integrate your communications. Now, prioritize your blog. Your blog should be a top priority, and it should be populated with educational and thought leadership content. I see a lot of AEC blogs, and they're used to show the culture, they're used to show the company, they're used to highlight projects. That is not the best use of your blog. Your blog should be for the sole purpose of thought leadership. It should be the cornerstone of your content marketing. And remember, you're a publisher, so publish the things that your audience cares about. And remember what I said, they don't care nearly as much about your company culture as you do, right? They want to be informed. They want something that's worth their time. Blogging is a lot like working out. The more you do it, the more results you're going to see, and the greater the impact will be. So make sure you prioritize your blog. Now, you want to get found online, obviously. Optimizing for Google and for search engines is critical, but part of this is looking and trying to identify how your audience is searching for things, making sure you're using the most popular phrases in your content, and making sure that you are answering their questions. That's kind of how you get found. The days of manipulating Google with a lot of technical wizardry and stuffed keywords is over. You've got to be the best answer. So think about what your audience is searching for and be the best answer. Now, one of your goals should be to generate leads and grow your email contact list. So make sure you include a subscription feature on your blog or your website so visitors can sign up to receive updates, right? It's a great way to identify those visitors and then nurture those contacts with other content, all right? Webinars, white papers, case studies. We call all that premium content. And we refer to it as premium content because it has more perceived value than a simple blog post, right? And because of that, you should gate the content behind a form on a landing page and simply require some basic information from the user. Showed you guys this ebook a little while back. You know, if someone is going to get a 90-minute webinar or a 25-page ebook, they're going to be willing to give you some basic information in exchange. So make sure what you have is worth gating, but don't be afraid to gate content in order to try to generate a name, put a name to a download, okay? Now, up until this point, we've been talking about publishing content. And if you followed my advice up until this point, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. But you can't just stop with publishing. You have to get the word out. You have to promote your content, right? You are creating magnetic content, but there's still some level of promotion, okay? So make sure you use social media to share content, right? Have your employees do the same. I love this quote from Jay Baer. And it's a really good way, I think, for AEC firms to put social media in the right perspective. Content is fire. Social media is gasoline, right? Gasoline without fire is not doing much good, right? It just kind of sits there. But adding fire to gasoline, you get an explosion, you get a reaction. So you've worked hard to create great content. It deserves to be read. Now, since we're on the topic of social media, I wanted to share this tip. Follow the 411 rule. You might say, what the heck is a 411 rule? It's a pretty simple concept. For every 6 updates on social media, 4 should be sharing someone else's content. This might be an article from ENR or CE News, maybe something from the Wall Street Journal or the local newspaper, maybe even a blog post from a partner or client. 1 should be your thought leadership content, your blog post, your white paper, your webinar, something like that. And only 1 should be about your company, such as your latest press release or news release or an announcement about a new project win or something to that. Use your social media in the same way that you're creating content. Don't just use it as a channel that you use to brag about your firm. Use it to be helpful to your audience. So moving on, we've got the strategy. You know how to create magnetic content. You're publishing and promoting. Now you've got to keep the train on the track, right? You got to manage the program. So how do you do that? Well, it all starts with what we call a content roadmap. Content planning should be viewed with a big picture, long-term perspective. You've got to know where you're going if you want to get to the right destination, right? So a content marketing roadmap, it really lays out a 6 to 12 month publishing plan that will identify, the topics that you're going to cover, themes for each month, maybe for a quarter. What formats are you going to be leveraging? How many webinars are you going to do? How many ebooks are you going to create? How many case studies? Things like that. This is not the same thing as an editorial calendar, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. This is really kind of a living, breathing document that lays out your overall content game plan, and it's helpful for planning purposes, including the blog editorial calendar, right? If you think about it, webinars, white papers, things like that, it takes some time to pull those together, so you really need to have an understanding of where you're going and plan accordingly, right? Even how many blog posts that you're planning to cover in any given time period. Now, in addition to the roadmap, you also want to create an editorial calendar for your blog. An editorial calendar is very much like what you think it is, right? It's simply who's the audience, what's the topic, what's the title, who's the author, what's the due date, and ultimately when are we going to publish it for each post that you plan to publish. Now, the roadmap is really a long-term view. The blog editorial calendar is really something that you're going to be doing, planning out about a month out, maybe 2 to 3 months out if possible. I will say a word of caution, don't get mired in the details. Get your plan in place, but leave room for adjustments. You come up with another idea, something happens in the news, adjust accordingly, right? You can move things around just like they do for magazines and newspapers as well. Now, you're certainly going to want to write about current issues and respond to news and research, but don't let all your energy be focused on time-sensitive topics, okay? Instead, you'll want to plan for topics that will have a long shelf life, right? Content that your audience is going to find valuable over a long period of time. Evergreen blog posts, I know we see this on our own blog posts that are 2 years old still drive a steady stream of web traffic, okay? An ebook or a white paper that you write. Don't write something that isn't going to be relevant in a year. Write something that will be relevant. Now, you might want to dust it off and update it every so often, but write content, produce content that's going to be evergreen. And along those lines, you want to get as much mileage as you can from each piece. Take a white paper and turn it into a webinar or a presentation. Take quotes from a blog and use that as a string of social media updates which link to the blog, okay? I'll tell you this story. A past life, I worked for a civil engineering firm, and we created a webinar series, and the purpose of the webinar series was around economic development, and it was really this idea of getting your locality site prospect ready. The principal, who was the subject matter expert, and he was the one presenting for the webinars, he actually scripted, I kid you not, he actually scripted word for word the entire 90-minute webinar. That's an engineer, right? Is that what you'd probably expect? Now, that might not have made it the most interesting webinar to listen to necessarily, but let me tell you this. I asked for the PowerPoint after the webinar, made a beeline for him. I was in the room, hey, can I have a copy of that PowerPoint? Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Guess what? Lo and behold, after some tweaking and editing, guess what? I ended up with about 24 blog posts, basically an entire year's worth of posts on that particular topic from one engineer. So be resourceful, look for ways to take one big idea and turn it into other content pieces, and ideally, when you're planning your content, think about repurposing at the start. Think about what topic, what piece, and how you're going to be able to repurpose it. Now, your firm probably already has a lot of content. You've got SOQs, proposals, brochures. Some of that can be used as a starting point. Deep down in all of that company-centric copy, there's probably some thought leadership there. The folks that speak at conferences, ask them for their presentations. Turn those into something useful for your content marketing program. Another thing, a lot of times principals will write articles that try to get published. They don't always get picked up. There could be some used, previously used articles laying around that never were picked up that might actually make really great white papers or perhaps a series of blog posts. Be a little bit creative. And one of the best tips I could share on how to help you manage your program is to keep a parking lot of unused topics, right? As you think about it, you brainstorm, you plan, there's likely to be topics that don't work this month, but they might work next month, right? And I found that, writer's block is when you don't know what you're supposed to write about, but if you peruse a list of topics that you've already got there, it's at least a starting point. It could at least lead to another topic, if not finding something on there that you can kind of grab. So when those moments come, and they absolutely will come, having a list of ideas that are already there is a great starting point. Okay, so we've come to the fifth and final step in the content marketing process, okay? You've got the strategy. You're creating and publishing great content. You're promoting it, and you're managing the program. So the final step is to monitor and measure results. Remember the strategy. We talked about setting goals and measuring goals. This is the measurement process. You want to measure against your goals and your KPIs. Now, as far as the monitoring goes, you definitely want to listen out on social media for how people are interacting with your content. If you create magnetic content, content that's share-worthy, it's going to get shared. And when it does, you need to engage with the sharers, right? Listen out for mentions. Watch out for retweets, for shares, and when that happens, thank those that take the time to share, okay? People comment on your blog. You might not get a ton of comments, but when people do, follow up, comment, engage. Remember, it is called social media, so remember to be social, okay? Now, in addition to listening, that's a starting point, but you've got to measure success, and you want to see what's working and see what's not working. And ultimately, analytics and measurement will help you demonstrate the ROI. And as we all know, that word gets thrown out a lot. But if you want to continue to receive support from the folks at the top, you've got to demonstrate some kind of return. Okay? Now, thankfully, the days of waiting to see if marketing campaign actually worked are gone, because today we've got so many digital tools that allow us to track, honestly, a lot of things in real time. You can see what's working right now as we speak. But you've got to know what to track, okay? You got to measure the right things, measuring what matters. So, measuring the right things will help you avoid being plagued with what I like to call paralysis by analysis. I mean, if you think about it, there's so much data out there now for marketers, and figuring out the best things to look at, what to measure, can be a challenge. So here I'm going to share with you three basic buckets of metrics. The first is consumption metrics, the second is engagement metrics, and then the third is conversion metrics, all right? Now, consumption metrics are really your first level of metrics. Basically, it's measuring the reach of your content, and it's a lot more about the quantity than the quality, okay? These are simple metrics like page or post views, video views, downloads for content, email opens, things like that. These are helpful for trying to understand what topics seem to resonate and those that don't, right? Certain posts talking about a certain topic get significantly less views than a topic that seems to get a lot. Well, guess what? You need to stop writing about that topic, and maybe you need to write some more about the other. Use it as a guide to help you understand the right approach, all right? Now, you want to go beyond that, and you want to start seeing how your audience is engaging with your content. What posts are getting shares and mentions. It's one thing to read a post, but if you share it, clearly there's a level of engagement. There's a level of them essentially recommending your post. You want to look at your emails. Which ones get forwarded? Do you get forwards? First of all, have that as an option available at the bottom. Don't make it so buried. And then which ones get forward? What about your inbound links or pingbacks? What other websites or blogs are linking to your content? Another way to measure engagement is the bounce rate. Okay, the bounce rate is the percentage of people that land on a page and then leave. You want that number to be as low as possible. Well, the lower the bounce rate, the more engaged people are, right? And you can also look at the average pages per visit. If people are sticking around for more than just the one article, that's a good sign that they're engaging, that they're engaged with you and your content. So look at those. And really, The last bucket of metrics are conversion metrics, and these go beyond consumption. It goes beyond engagement, and it starts to really identify moving the needle, right? First thing, form fills. Anytime someone fills out a form on your website or landing page in order to access content, could be a webinar, could be a white paper, there's some level of engagement. That's a conversion metric. Subscribing to your blog or email. I mentioned you may not be likely to get a ton of subscribers, at least not right out of the gate. The ones you do get, there's a level of engagement, and they want to stay in the loop with what you're doing. So make sure you have that incorporated. Leads generated, conversion rate. How many leads are you getting from your website? How many of your followers are turning into potential clients or teaming partners? Okay. One thing I've noticed, my firm does a ton of website design and development for AEC firms. The contact page form is becoming a significant source of new business leads. More and more people are researching your firm, and instead of picking up the phone to call to ask to speak with someone, they're going to the contact form and they're submitting a request to speak to someone. All right, so how many leads are generated from that, and how many of those are actually turning in to clients, the conversion rate. All right, and then what you want to do is figure out what pages, what posts did they look at before they actually got to the contact form. And this is sort of a catch-all. The last thing, BD opportunities, right? Of all the opportunities your firm's tracking or is closed, whether they're RFP related or not, how many of those opportunities can be tied back to your content? Remember earlier I showed the client journey, and I talked about how there's many, many, many different touch points along the way, okay, right? Lots and lots of touch points. And a new client win is often the result of an extended period of time and touch points. So what new business opportunities and wins can you connect to your firm's content marketing, right? Maybe that new client was primarily a lead that came in through an existing relationship. But if that particular prospect downloaded a white paper, attended a webinar, looked at particular blog posts, visited your website, well, guess what? You can assume and you can attach that content to contributing ultimately to that client win. It's all about attribution, right? We all know it's never one thing. So look for the things that are contributing to the wins. And I'll end with this step for step 5. I'll end with this last thought. Testing and tweaking, okay? In other words, simply put, don't be afraid to fail, right? Try some things. Measure, tweak, and repeat, right? There are really no absolutes, right? What works for one firm may not work for another. My firm does a lot of strategic planning. We work with firms all the time to help them with their content marketing strategy. Well, guess what? It is never cookie cutter. It is never one size fits all. I wish, like some consulting industries, you've got one thing that you sell to 1,000 firms. It doesn't work that way because every firm is different, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. So I've given you guidance today. I think I've shared a lot of things that will help you, but you're not going to truly know what's going to resonate until you actually start trying things. So with any marketing effort, keep doing what's working, tweak what's not, or ditch it altogether, and ultimately just proactively look to keep raising the bar. Now, I want to leave you for the kind of the third and final part of our webinar today with a few tips about sustaining success. Okay, if you think about it, you've bought into the idea, at least as a marketing department, of content marketing. You got a strategy in place. You understand and are following the 5 steps, but getting off the ground is really only half the battle. And honestly, it's probably the easier half. So how do you build a sustainable content marketing program? As we've been through the webinar, I'm sure many of you have been thinking, and I know this because while I can't see your faces, I give a presentation similar to this in person a lot, and I see the faces, and inevitably some of the first questions that come up is this, what about proposals? I mean, we have so many proposals, Tim. I don't have time for this. We don't have the staff. We don't have anyone to do this. We're already swamped with responding to RFPs and doing interview preparation and all that. Well, that topic is a topic for another day. I won't cover it there, but I will kind of start with this. It is absolutely positively going to take principal buy-in from the folks at the top. All right, my firm, I've been with the firm for 3 years, and we have pitched a lot of clients. I can tell you that only one time that I can remember did we do content marketing strategy work for a firm where the principals were not involved in that whole process, right? It always takes the principals being in the room, understanding what's taking place, buying into the concept of it, and supporting it both financially as well as time and resources and staff and everything else that comes along with it, okay? You guys already have a lot on your plates if you're in AEC marketing, right? And proposals absolutely dominate the marketing staff's time. Technical staff, right? The subject matter experts, they've got tons of ongoing project work and new business pursuits, and the bean counters are expecting them to be billable for a large majority of their time. So in order to make time for the people that need to be involved in content marketing, executive leadership has to buy into the strategic importance of content marketing, and they have to make it a priority. And I'll always say this, you're going to want to make a pitch. You're going to want to put together a presentation, sell the leadership on the benefits of content marketing. Most importantly, tie how the value and the benefits of content marketing are directly and specifically tied to helping the firm achieve their primary business goals and objectives, specifically thought leadership, differentiation, awareness, pre-positioning, all of those things. That's really how you're going to get the buy-in. And then once you get the buy-in at the folks at the top, the principals, now you're going to want to identify the people in your firm that are thought leaders, or they at least have the potential to be thought leaders, and approach them and to let them know what you're trying to accomplish, right? Seek out the rock stars that are already speaking, that are already presenting. They've already got a visible presence in the industry, but also look out for those mid-level staff that I mentioned earlier. And similar to what we just talked about with the principals, help the experts understand the importance of content marketing, the need for them to be involved, and ultimately you're going to want to just reiterate the power and possibility that content marketing brings along with it, all right? And once they understand what you're trying to do and they realize that this is not just good for the firm, but it's also good for their personal brand as well, right? You're going to be a lot more likely to get them on board. And once you get them on board, it might be a small group, but you're going to have internal advocates and champions for the cause that are not just creating content, but hopefully they're influencing others to do so in the future as well. That's real important because you're going to consistently need to be getting new people involved in creating content. Now, I want to caution you about this. I can't reiterate this enough. You've got to set realistic expectations. Like, okay, if you're expecting to start content marketing and immediately get results, you're going to be disappointed. All right, a lot of firms they fail to realize that content marketing is not a quick fix. Okay, it's not something that's going to happen right away. It's definitely a long-term strategy, and it's very much like what I said about blogging, like working out. You don't go to the gym on January 2nd and expect to, in one day, lose 25 pounds and have a six-pack. It just doesn't work that way. It takes consistency. It takes time. It takes dedication. And that's absolutely how it is about content marketing. You've got to look at it as a long-term strategy. The longer you do it, the more often you do it, the better your success is going to be. Now, other questions that I've gotten over time and comments I hear people make is, Tim, this is really overwhelming. Honestly, at this point, some of you may be really stressed out. You may be overwhelmed. Just the thought of having to do all of this that I've talked about in addition to your already full plate, it's very much overwhelming. So the best advice I can give is you have to learn to crawl before you can learn to walk, before you learn to run, okay? In other words, you just want to start small, right, and build out from there. You can't possibly start doing everything that I've talked about today, all right? That list where I showed you all the different content formats, do not try to do that all out of the gate. You're going to need to start small and build out. Get some early wins, keep expanding, build the program over time. And then this is really the key. I've already kind of hinted at it, but you've got to commit to the long haul, right? It is a long-term strategy. I like to say it this way. Content marketing is a commitment. It is not a campaign. A campaign has a specific set of time that it runs, and you measure the results at the end. This is a program. It's a commitment. It's something that you're going to keep doing and doing and doing and doing, and as soon as you stop, you know, the benefits of that will subside, right? It's a long-term strategy, just like thought leadership is, just like business development is. It's very much like that. So if you're going to do it, commit to it. If you don't think your firm can actually do it, then I wouldn't even bother to start, because it's something that requires ongoing commitment and dedication, absolutely. Now, before we move on to Q&A, I know we've got some questions that have popped up that some of you have. I don't know what kind of content marketer I would be if I didn't have some content to offer you. So I've got an ebook here, a 41-page ebook that's available for a free download. I would highly recommend you go check it out, circlesstudio.com/content. I promise you, you will not be getting spammed. I do promise you that you will receive helpful, educational content related to content marketing and other similar topics. So definitely pull that up and go download that today if you have a chance. Now, with that said, it's time for Q&A. So I'm going to ask Ryan to come back, and we'll jump in and get to your questions.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it. We've got quite a few questions rolling in. Bit of a long one here, but let me get it out to you. If a majority of our clients are school districts, how do we ensure that they are being pulled to our page? Unlike other areas, RFPs are voted on by superintendents and school board members who aren't super engaged with social media.
Yeah, so I've gotten that question before related to similarly with a federal client. You know, all of our clients are the federal government. I would say just like you're trying to build relationships with individual people. If you think about it, I remember my last firm, they always wanted to know who was on that selection committee, who was going to be involved. You know, try to get the content in the hands of those people. It may not be digitally, it may be in person. I mean, the best advice I can give is for the marketing team is stop giving your business development people statements of qualification and project profiles to take to prospects. Give them white papers, give them ebooks, give them you know, links to send in an email to follow up with someone. So if you're not thinking that they're going to take the time to check you out on social media, you know, in an email, follow up with links to blog posts that are related to the conversation that your business development people had. I can almost promise you every single meeting that a business development person has with a client, if it's a good business development person, they're asking questions and they're listening, and the client is expressing some pain points or expressing things that they don't necessarily know, and so use your content marketing as sort of fuel and ammunition for the business development staff. And that's where I think business development and marketing kind of aligning together a little bit more can really be powerful, because then marketing is creating the content that the prospects and clients actually are interested in reading, when we all know when the business development person shows up with an SOQ or project profiles, they take a couple looks and then it ends up in the recycling bin. So I think that answers your question. I think it's just look for unique ways to get your content out. I mean, content marketing can be print as well as digital. So, you know, maybe print your white paper and make some copies of that and give it to them in person. That'd be my recommendation.
Tim, thank you very much. There was a request to go back a slide so people could see the URL to download your ebook. If you will,
oh, there we go.
Reverse. Another question. What is the best content type to start with? If we're not doing this now, where do we start?
Great question. 100% I would tell you to start with your blog. Get a blog, build it into your website. If you have to, you know, a lot of firms, and I mentioned we do a lot of website redesign. We see this where a firm has started a blog, but they kind of had to go to a third-party WordPress platform or Blogger or something like that. It's not part of their site, but get a blog however you have to get it. Ideally, build it into your website and start blogging, commit to blogging. I think that blogging is essentially the newspaper or the magazine of the publishing world, right? You think about how we all consume news and information every single day on websites. Your blog that's where you can have that constant information. The other reason I mentioned blogging is very versatile, so you can use it in that early awareness stage, but you can also use it in the interest stage, and you can also use it in the evaluation stage and on into once they're a client. So I think a blog is the most versatile content platform, and that's where I would absolutely recommend that everyone start with the blog. And once you get the blog established, you can kind of think about other formats.
Tim, hey, thanks a lot. That's good to hear. That's where we started many years ago. We've actually integrated our blog directly into our client feedback tool application, so people stumble across our blog posts. Sounds like a really solid idea to get that out there. Got another long question here. How do we reach clients when they aren't typically on social media? We're B2B and want to reach industrial clients and manufacturers, people working in plants and facilities. I've looked for our clients out there on social, but they largely aren't there. I agree with content marketing. It doesn't seem to be worth the effort to maintain an active multi-channel SM presence.
Yeah, I think it goes back to social media is a channel, right? Social media isn't your marketing strategy. And I think a lot of people think about social media like it's the end, whereas I look at it as it's the means. You know, think about the quote I shared that content is fire, social media is gasoline. Social media without content marketing is just a bullhorn yelling, hey, look at me, right? It is not going to be anything that attracts your audience. And to the point of the person with the question, if your audience isn't on social media, then that's not a channel that's going to have a lot of value for it. But I'll tell you where they are. They're on Google. They're going to go to Google and they're going to search for things. So this is kind of combining the first two questions together. A robust blogging presence, you know, people are going to find you in your industry when they're doing a search. Because again, they're not searching for your firm. They're not searching for, they're not going on and searching for engineering firms in Kalamazoo, Michigan. They're searching for answers to their questions, and they all have them. You know, what's the best approach for this, or how do I solve this challenge, or, you know, what are the latest trends in stormwater management, or whatever it may be. That's what they're searching for. So, you know, don't worry so much about social. I think social should always be part of your marketing mix and your channels, but social media without content marketing, in my opinion, is just a waste of time in this industry, right? If you're, if you're a consumer products company, yeah, people out there want to talk to you and they want to interact with you. But in this world, in AEC, you know, you're not going to be hitting all of your audience with social media. So that's why you need email. That's why you need trade shows and conferences. That's why you need to make sure that you have a multi-channel approach to get your content out there. But I would argue that content marketing and that whole philosophy should be pervasive in all of your marketing, not just on your blog, but you should rethink how you do email. You should rethink how you do conferences and trade shows. You should rethink how, the direct mail that you're even sending out, right? It's all about earning attention instead of demanding it, and I think that's where you can get found by your audience. It's not on social media when they can find you on Google or connect with you kind of with some of those other channels that I mentioned. Good question.
Thanks, Tim. A follow-up question from one of the earlier folks here. What are key questions to ask a freelancer or a third party to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck with content priority first?
Yeah. Good question. There's a big misnomer, and I'm sure folks in this industry that have tried to work with outside freelancers or marketing firms that don't have an understanding of the industry, the learning curve is incredibly steep. I was a marketing director for a firm, and when I first got there, I was trying to hire folks in the outside the industry, thinking, oh, I'll bring in an outside perspective, it'll be good, and I just found that the learning curve was so steep. I ended up only hiring inside people because I wanted folks that could hit the ground running. I think the same applies for freelancers and other agencies. If they don't understand what you do, I'm not saying that they have to be engineers or architects or construction managers, but if they're not used to working in that space, it's going to be challenging. So I think personally I would look for someone, if it's a freelancer, I would look for a freelancer that specializes in technical writing, that has done some writing for the AEC industry before. Someone with a journalistic background ideally would be nice if they're writing, because what they're going to have to do is interview your subject matter experts. They're going to have to try to draft the content. So I would look for people that aren't just good writers, but people that kind of understand the industry and that can turn it into the right kind of content. If you hire a firm, again, similarly, look for a firm that understands the space, where the learning curve is going to be really small, and to where they can kind of hit the ground running and provide guidance along the way. Most firms that have to outsource, whether it's a freelancer or to an agency, they're not just looking for someone to help do the work, they're also looking for someone to help guide them along the way as well. So I think industry expertise is really important. Not necessarily absolutely positively requirement. I just think in the long run you're going to avoid a lot of frustrating situations if you look for someone with industry experience. Good question.
Great, thank you.
You guys have some good questions today. Keep them coming.
Looks like we're down to the last one here, and before you answer, I'm going to jump in with a quick answer of my own from my experience, but I'll certainly let you have last word here.
Sure.
What's the best way to keep on top of impactful topics and trends so that you have content to talk about? My experience, I go to the conferences where my clients go, and that's where we find guys like Tim and invite Tim to come deliver some great content out to our network. So I would say hang out where your clients hang out, and the people who are talking at those conferences and sharing information, sign up for their newsletters. It's going to give you a great source of content and voices that you can share. That's my one suggestion for me. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I think the other thing I would advise, I don't know the person asking, I assume they're a marketing person. I always like to tell people to kind of piggyback on what you said, Ryan. You said hang out where your clients hang out, and I say hang out with the subject matter experts. Spend intentional time with them, take them out to lunch regularly, meet with them, pick their brains, find out what's new, what is coming down the pike. If marketing isn't spending intentional time with subject matter experts, they're not going to even know what to recommend. And again, in most cases, the subject matter experts are waiting on you, the marketing person, to suggest what kind of topics to cover. So I think you need to spend time with them. The other thing, in addition to hanging out where your clients hang out, spend some time with your clients. Maybe identify your best clients that have no problems setting aside 20 minutes or so to meet with a marketing person. Have the marketing person ask them what are the types of things that they would be interested in reading about and learning about. And then, honestly, if you want a year's worth of marketing topic ideas, talk to the business development people, talk to the principals and the project managers, and ask them what questions they get asked all the time. In a typical business development meeting for the first time, what are the questions that a client asks them? Also, thinking about it from a project perspective, what do the project managers get asked most often right before a project starts, during a project kickoff, halfway through the project, at the end of the project? Because that's all the kind of content that you can be writing about as well. I mean, if you think about it, if you're trying to position your firm as experts, you're trying to answer your audience's questions and build trust and credibility, what better way to do that than to have a bunch of content that really explains so much of the process, so that once they're actually ready to select you and work with you, they already have a really, really good understanding of the big picture. Real quick case in point, I'm refinancing my house right now, or at least I'm trying to, and I'm telling you, it would be really, really helpful if the company I was working with had a database, a blog of content that would answer the 10,000 questions that I've sent to my loan officer in an email. Imagine if they had all that content answered for me. Imagine if they mailed me, along with the application for the refinance and the mortgage, imagine if they mailed me a book that was like Refinancing 101, an introductory guide to refinancing. So same thing in your industry, right? There's lots of questions about different types of projects, about different approaches, and I think just, gosh, if you really start to think about it, and as you identify your personas, you're gonna uncover way more ideas than you're possibly going to be able to create in a year. And I think you need to combine that with looking for the opportunities, like Ryan said, of the conferences and the cutting edge topics, to be the thought leader, to get out ahead of the curve. And that's where, honestly, sometimes those ideas come from the younger folks than the senior folks. A lot of the clients we have, the technology gurus in the company are late 20s, early 30-something people, that they're the ones bringing all the cutting edge technologies and ideas to the table, and they're the ones that are becoming the thought leaders. It isn't the 50-year-old CEO or chief operating officer. So I think it's just getting in and mingling with the thought leaders and finding out from them as well as the client. So I don't know, hopefully that brings a little insight to that question.
Tim, thank you very much. You also raised an excellent point that segues nicely into what we over here at Client Feedback Tool do, and that is you mentioned having conversations at various phases in the project, and that's what my clients all around the world are doing, gathering feedback from clients, checking in, and using those insights and the metrics to figure out if we discover this phase we're doing something really innovative and creative, and it's creating great success for our clients. You can generate your own great content and not have to repurpose someone else's. So I utilize those insights with your clients. Even if you find something that's a problem and you fix it, sometimes that solution is a great lesson learned that you can share in a more generic format. And we're the kind of people who know how to spot these problems before they happen and avoid them. Those kinds of topics can drive a lot of trust and credibility as well.
Absolutely.
So we are right on time. I see about 20 seconds left on the clock for the 90 minutes. I see a good chunk of you stuck around to the very end. Thank you very much. Please know that we will be asking you for some feedback on this webinar. We'll share that with Tim, and you can expect some follow-up from us as well for any further questions or action items. Everyone, thank you very much for being here. Tim, we certainly appreciate your time and your insights today.
Absolutely.
If any of the audience have any other questions, Tim's contact information was up there, and of course you can always get answers from us, answers@clientfeedbacktool.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.